Ukraine crushes North Korean Vanguard. Moscow sacrifices ally in dawn disaster. What if a country so secretive it rarely admits its own soldiers exist, even less fights abroad, has quietly committed thousands of troops into one of the most brutal modern frontline wars, only to see many of them vanish into battlefield wreckage? Imagine those soldiers being pressed forward as shock troops, fed into drone-infested killing zones, and then quietly withdrawn when the losses become too glaring. That's the unfolding drama of Moscow leveraging North Korean forces in its war against Ukraine, and in the process, sacrificing an ally in what some are already calling a dawn disaster on the Russian flank. This is not just about war, it's about trust, utility, expendability, and how alliances fracture under pressure. North Korea deployed to support Russia. The first startling twist. Around late 2024, credible intelligence began circulating that North Korea had dispatched between 10,000 and 12,000 troops to reinforce Russian forces, especially in the Kursk region, in response to Ukraine's cross-border push. These numbers came from multiple sources: Ukrainian officials, Western intelligence, and South Korea's National Intelligence Service. The stated purpose: help offset Russian manpower shortages and supplement frontline assaults. But these were not elite units with integration training. Many of the troops reportedly lacked experience in counter-drone warfare, combined arms operations, or coordination across multinational command structures. Language, equipment compatibility, and battlefield discipline were already emerging as structural handicaps. Russia and North Korea initially denied or obfuscated their involvement, issuing no official confirmation. Cracks appear: heavy casualties and withdrawal. By early 2025, reports began to coalesce. North Korean forces were suffering serious attrition. Some Ukrainian sources claimed as many as 3,000 casualties, killed or wounded, roughly a third of their deployed force. South Korean intelligence estimates placed around 300 killed and 2,700 wounded by January. Others reported that over 4,000 had been rendered combat ineffective. The result? By mid-January, North Korean units were reportedly pulled back from frontline engagements in Kursk. Observers noted that they were no longer seen in heavy fighting zones, and Russian command had quietly scaled back their visible deployment. The official explanation: regrouping, rotation of fresh units, or redeployment. But many analysts interpreted this as Moscow realizing it had overextended its new ally. Yet the story doesn't end there. By February, Russian and Ukrainian statements suggested that elements of North Korean troops were being reintroduced. Fresh assaults, launched in certain sectors bearing their insignia. That move indicated the Kremlin still considered them useful, despite their earlier retrenchment and losses. The crushed Vanguard. How North Korea was used. Why did Russia push North Koreans forward under such perilous conditions? Analysts suggest several possible reasons. Shock assault role. North Korean units appear to have been used in the most exposed, high-casualty sectors, often to spearhead assaults or probe weaknesses in Ukrainian lines. In some field accounts, they advanced with minimal armored or artillery support, making them vulnerable to drones, precision fire, or counterattacks. Expendability and deniability. Because Moscow could deny their presence, using foreign allied troops allowed Russia to absorb losses without domestic political costs. If casualties mounted among their own troops, morale or public opinion might suffer more. Testing ground. From Moscow's perspective, deploying North Koreans offered a way to evaluate how reliably Pyongyang would follow Russian strategic direction, handle coordination, and integrate in a high-stakes theater. Propaganda and leverage. Moscow may have believed that showing a united front with its ally would intimidate or complicate Western response. And for North Korea, the deployment was a high-stakes gamble: military experience, stronger ties to Russian technology, and an opportunity to showcase loyalty. But the cost was steep. Many front reports claim that North Korean units were decimated, sometimes being ordered to hold untenable positions, or even to sacrifice themselves to avoid capture. Some field diaries suggest soldiers prepared letters pledging loyalty or indicating they should kill themselves rather than surrender. Sacrifice in dawn. Moscow's betrayal? In many ways, Moscow's handling of North Korean forces feels like a betrayal. Troops placed in raw assault roles, inadequate backing, communication breakdowns, and even attempted cover-ups, such as issuing fake Russian IDs to North Korean captives, point to deliberate concealment of losses. Captured North Korean soldiers reportedly had Russian IDs in the names of Russian citizens from regions like Tuva. That suggests a calculated attempt to bury their identity in case of capture or death. Meanwhile, statements from the Kremlin thanked Allied forces, but never publicly named DPRK units. Later, when Pyongyang confirmed its troops were fighting, it did so in modest, controlled language, emphasizing mutual defense and heroism. The narrative emerging. North Korea was initially inserted, used heavily, then quietly pulled back when casualties became too visible, and then placed back in rotation, but under tighter control and reduced visibility. That pattern reeks of a country perceived as expendable once its utility declines. Ukraine's gains and strategic payoff. Ukraine and its Western backers have leveraged this saga powerfully. The presence and loss of North Korean troops highlights how stretched Russia is and how it's turning to unconventional means to maintain pressure. Ukraine uses captured DPRK soldiers' testimony, battlefield footage, and drone kills to amplify the narrative. Look, Russia is sacrificing foreign allies. Militarily, Ukraine adapted rapidly. Precision drone strikes, disruption of supply lines, targeting weakly supported North Korean units. Those units often lacked counter-drone capability, air cover, or mobility, making them easier targets. In effect, they often acted as bait or shield for advancing Russian units. Politically, the story helps galvanize global support. The involvement of a third country draws wider media attention, raises moral stakes, and gives Ukraine leverage when arguing for more aid, sanctions, and condemnation of Moscow's alliances. Risks, uncertainties, and counter-arguments. Overclaiming and misinformation. Because we rely largely on intelligence leaks and battlefield claims, casualty numbers could be inflated or manipulated for propaganda. Neither Moscow nor Pyongyang reliably disclose real figures. Partial redeployment. The withdrawal from frontline duty doesn't necessarily mean DPRK forces are gone. Some may have been repositioned for support, training, or reserve roles. Motivation and morale. While many critics say Pyongyang's soldiers were ill-prepared, some captured diaries and testimonies show they were deeply committed, willing to die under strict orders. That complicates the simple sacrifice narrative. Future risk to Ukraine. If Russian command learns from this and refits Allied deployments more carefully, mixing units, providing better support, the same pattern might come back with better results for Moscow. Domestic blowback in North Korea. Losses abroad, especially concealed ones, carry political risk. Kim Jong-un later publicly honored fallen DPRK soldiers in ceremonies, a rare acknowledgement. That suggests the regime knew losses were too large to silence entirely. The story of Russia using North Korean troops is not just a war footnote. It's a stark lesson in alliances, utility, and sacrifice. An ally was wielded, weakened, hidden, and redeployed. Its soldiers caught in a deadly calculus they never fully shaped. Ukraine's defense exposed the strategic hubris behind it. Moscow may try to claim strength, but the battlefield is honest. If this narrative struck you, if you feel the human and geopolitical weight behind it, please like, subscribe, and share. I want to hear from you. Do you believe North Korea was a willing player in this sacrifice, or a pawn in Russian maneuvering? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Stay critical, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next deep dive.